Welcome to Clubhouse with a review of the Bandai entry-grade RX-78 Gundam full weapons set, coming 1 year after the initial EG RX-78 release. The EG Gundam was one of my earliest reviews on this channel, and it was the first video to hit 100 views and 1000 views, so I really owe a lot to this little guy. Of course, I wanted to take a look at this new kit and scrutinize the hell out of all its new weapons, because that's what you're here to see, right? So let's get down to business. The full weapon set of the EG RX-78 was released on December 11, 2021, and it sold for 1,100 yen, which is still one of the most affordable kits around. The box is a CG of the actual kit, much like every other EG kit, so there is no illustrator. The box itself looks kinda narrow and funky, but it actually measures 23 by 7 by 6.5 centimeters, or in other words, it's actually just the old EG box turned sideways, only this one is a little bit thicker. The short side of the box is laid out exactly the same as the original kit, but with a new photo there. The other side is the rare case where we do get a different photo with the Beam Saber taken out. The long side condenses the Gundam's info down a little bit to make space for all the new shots of the weapons that you get inside. And the other side tells you everything you get in the box, and then it's all legal text. Inside the box, the RX-78 comes to us on this multicolor runner that they snap into two halves to put into the box, so this is a very quick and easy kit to manufacture as always. The white parts are the same, molded as one big piece and then split into two to fit into the box. And here are the weapons, and they follow that same pattern as well, but here we learn a bit more about this kit. So you probably already know that the Bazooka was seen last year bundled with the G3 color of this kit, and we get the gates here that lets Bandai swap out the rest of the runners so they can mold just the Bazooka for that set. This was made in 2020 as we'd expect. The thing is, if we look at the dates on the other weapons, they're also marked as 2020, so the weapons here aren't a later edition, and Bandai actually had these last year already when they released the G3, and they've been sitting on these the whole time. There's one more thing too. So the Bazooka can be isolated as its own runner, but so can the Beam Javelin, and so can the Gundam Hammer, which is to say, you might be seeing these weapons in the future bundled with other kits, and Bandai is probably hoping to get more mileage out of these molds than just with this kit. We also get the Beam Saber blades, which are the ones you get normally with HG kits, so these aren't anything unique to this set. We get a set of instructions with the familiar EG layout on the front, and this time the center pages are used for the new instructions that they added in, and you no longer get an introduction to Gundam models like there was on the older kit. The other side is all for assembly instructions, as you'd expect. A little over an hour later, we have the RX-78, and I won't be repeating things from its own review of course, but this is actually a color variant and it's not entirely the same. Bringing in the original kit, it's a bit subtle through the video, but you can tell that the two are colored differently. The newer kit is what Bandai likes to call the anime colors, which sticks closer to the hues that we saw in the TV show way back then, and this is quite a popular color and a lot of fans like the slightly more cheerful hue. The white has a signature duck egg green tint that's really key to the classic RX-78 look. The blue is really bright and cheerful, which Tomino actually really dislikes. The red is more desaturated, and the yellow is slightly more orange. I don't think you should buy this kit for these new colors, but I also don't think anyone will actually even consider doing that. Bandai knows you probably already have an EG Gundam, so it's kinda nice of them to use the anime colors so we don't exactly have the exact same thing twice, even though they are forcing us to buy it twice. Of course, if you don't have the EG Gundam yet, then now you know that you have a choice between two different colors. Or maybe a second one of this kit isn't so crazy. So let me do a quick update on my original review. Now I'm not changing anything I said from there, but you see, at the time the kit was still new and no one knew yet that this kit really ages poorly like milk. If you have one, you know that the joints go limp really quick, like the wrist here that doesn't want to stay up anymore, and the shoulders are just a universal woe and they rattle around like crazy. This happens because the joints are all made of polystyrene, the regular plastic like the rest of the kit, but once it gets worn down even a little bit from the joints rubbing against each other, it loses a lot of grip. It's just a reality of the materials they used here, but it does sour this kit that's otherwise so perfect when it comes out of the box first like you see here. Then there are the pegs here on the hip that break a lot, including on mine, because ironically the legs grip onto the ball too tightly. I've patched mine up, and you can go see how to do that in the repair video, which is getting really popular and spreading around the internet. TLDR, the kit is still a wonderful starter kit, but sadly it might force you to learn about kit repairs before too long. Of course, we're all here to see the new weapons, so let's start with the Gundam Hammer that has the most to talk about. When the set was first shown, some fans immediately thought it looked an awful lot like something we already got. So here we have another Gundam Hammer, and you can immediately see the resemblance. The new weapon is actually altered from this older one right here, and it's based off the 3D models from that one. This older one comes from a weapon set from back in 2015 named Tem's OD weapon. You know, Tem as in Tem Ray, Amuro's father. Don't think too hard about it, the name doesn't really have any significance. This was bundled with Gunpla Ace in July 2015, and there was another version of it released at the same time with the Beam Javelin that was released on July 25th, 2015, and it was bundled with Gundam Ace. We'll be seeing that weapon too a little bit later, of course, because I'm crazy and I buy everything. If we strip them down and look at the ball of the weapon, we can see how the geometry is basically entirely untouched and reused from the old version. Don't mind the bit of glue I put on here, I meant to sand it down way back then. The key difference here is that they altered the spikes and removed that rim along the base of it, so the new spikes are now smooth from the base to the tip, which is actually a good change because this is more accurate to the one we saw in the show. With the spikes back on, we can see how those rims really make the hammer a little bit too busy, and the new one is simple and clean and just to the point. The chains are mostly the same, which you can probably tell by their curve. If we put them side by side like this, we can see how their silhouettes line up exactly, so this really is made from that exact same 3D model, copy and pasted over before they made some alterations to it. One key change here is the joint at the very top right here at the ball used to be loose and movable like this one right here, and on the new one it's fixed in place. If you really wanted, the chains can be swapped around for whatever build you might have in mind. This is a good change because the old hammer has 2 loose joints, and the poor thing is actually impossible to pose in any meaningful way where it just hangs and droops all over the place like this. Things are slightly better with only this one joint letting it swing side to side like this. It's actually still not very good because of that joint, but it's not entirely impossible to pose, unlike the old one which most people just flat out glued it in place. The designers did improve this, but they didn't entirely fix the problem, sadly. Here are the handles side by side, and we can see once again the copy-pasted geometry. The first link on that chain is rotated 90 degrees too, but that's not super significant. The link itself was moved down to the chain because the handle needs to fit into the hands, which can't open up, so it slides in like this. If we try the same thing with the old handle, we can see exactly why that alteration was needed. This is clearly something the designers regret a little bit, the hands here, and we don't have this one-piece hand anymore on the Strike Gundam or the upcoming new. Next, let's see it against this version of the weapon that comes with a G30 version of the RX-78. That version of the Gundam is now only sold as the HG Gunpla Starter Set Volume 2, or you can get the same weapon with the HG Forever Gundam that's based on the same kit. Obviously, the G30 hammer has an actual metal chain, which is awesome, even though the colors don't actually match up, and the ball has those smooth spikes as well, though the newer one has those really nice flourishes at the base of each spike. And the overall ball is a little bit bigger, which some people might prefer. The old handle is also way smaller with less flourishes, and the new one will definitely stand out better on the display. The old handle was slim, but it sadly still doesn't fit through the EG hands. I know you're thinking this, but no, you can't give the chain to the new hammer because it just falls right off the joint right here. So if you want to do this, you will have to make some modifications. But yeah, the G30 hammer is a totally different version of this weapon. It's nicer with the chain, but the mold itself isn't actually as good as the newer one. Now we have one more version of this weapon in 1144 model kit form with this classic weapons for mobile suit set from 1981. Here's the Gundam Hammer shown proudly at the top right here, and this is still the only way we can get the upgraded Hyper Hammer, which a lot of people forget that it even exists. The old hammer has a plastic chain as well, but it's fully straightened out like this, and you actually have to use a hairdryer to bend it into a shape you want, but the chain itself is actually really long compared to the new one. Surprisingly, the classic hammer's ball is about as big as the new one, though the spikes have a very different shape. The old one has quite a chubby and adorable look to it, and if you're super observant, the old one actually has 2 more spikes than the new one. This old set gets reprinted quite a lot, so either one isn't super hard to get a hold of for a build. The old handle has really small hooks at the base compared to the new one, though it's still quite well decorated from something from way back in 1981. The chain on this is glued in place, so there's no way to have the EG kit hold it unless you plan to have this in the arm permanently. So the newest version of this weapon is an easy way to get this otherwise limited release of the weapon from back in 2015, and it's currently the cheapest way to get this for a build. It's better than the droopy mess from that older one, but it's not by a lot. If you have it resting on the ground like this, it's mostly fine, but you can't really have it in any kind of a mid-swing or action pose, which is really boneheaded, and I'm not sure how they expected people to actually use this, whether it's to play or to pose. For builders, this is fine and awesome because we now have ready access to a large number of this weapon that you can glue or modify or do whatever the heck you want with it. And of course, it's good too if you want to give it to another kid to earn some geeky street cred. It's useful is what I mean, even if it doesn't make a whole lot of sense straight out of the box. And next we have the second time the Beam Javelin has been made into any retail kit. And if you're a Gundam model not like me, you'll be thinking, well, wait, but the Beam Javelin was never made in any retail kit before. Well, let's go back to the 1981 set. You see on the bottom here, you see that funny looking extending rod? That's not the Beam Saber, that's actually the Beam Javelin, or so this set claims. It's a whole big can of worms that I will cover in this set's own review, link will be in the description whenever that happens. Anyway, here it is next to our modern one, and yeah, it looks pretty silly, but it's here for completeness sake and just so you know that there is this oddball version of the weapon that exists. The real important comparison here is with the TEM OD set version of this. Unlike the Hammer, the Javelin is an entirely new mold this time and it reuses nothing from the OD one. If we look at the ball at the top right here, the spikes are a simpler shape, but most important of all, on the new one, only one spike has those ugly seams around it, where the older one has that seam on every single spike. This is actually really excellent work from the designers, so let me explain. So this half of the Javelin looks like this when it's still on the runner, so it's molded as one whole piece, and you might think, big deal, right? I see it, so what? Well, okay, so quick crash course on injection molding, because you'll never see Gundam models the same way after this. A normal model kit is molded with a two-part mold that works like a waffle iron, with two halves closing together and then being filled with plastic. Now, there are some special limitations to what you can and cannot do when you mold like this. Taking this part here as an example, you can go from a wider part of your piece and then go inwards to a narrower space, so that's like how we move towards the top right here. And you can go the other way around, going from narrow to wide if you want. What you can't do is go wide, then to narrow, then back wide again. You can only go in one direction and you can never return. So you can go straight down too if you like, and that's allowed. Well, Bandai and other model makers have gotten so good at this, it will never ever occur to you that they work under this limit for all their kits all the time through the entire runner. And just as a quick tangent, you do see parts like this too that breaks from that rule because they actually have an additional piece that sticks in from this direction. So that's a 3-part mold and it's not quite the same thing. But yeah, I've seen a fair share of model reviewers bash model kits without being aware that you can't just mold anything in any shape you like. With that in mind, consider how difficult it is for the normal brain to comprehend how this part here actually still follows those same rules that I just laid out. This is made with a 2-part mold. It's just done with some crazy spatial gymnastics and it's amazing stuff. I encourage you to study your next model and see all the tricks Bandai used to create the parts on each modern kit, and you will better appreciate the work that goes into even the simplest model that we buy today. Okay, so the short of this is, the new Javelin is a wonderful mold at the top here. It's not clear, which is a bummer, and it's not properly colored, which breaks EG tradition. The other weapons can kinda skirt by being gray, but the Javelin here really shouldn't be gray on any part of it. I can't let that go too easily. But the color is secondary to a more fundamental problem here. So the handle goes into the EG hand without any problem as we expect, but you can probably already see what's wrong. We have to grip this thing at the very bottom like this, and that makes this weapon basically useless on an EG Gundam. And like most problems I've discussed here on reviews, Bandai maliciously hides this in the photos on the box, and this pose right here, it hides that problem in plain sight. And you know what's worse? The OD Javelin didn't have this problem, even though it didn't have to solve this problem. So this one here looks kinda short, right? It actually comes with this ring adapter that goes onto the base, and with it, you just plug in any modern RX-78 Beam Saber and the Javelin is now complete. It looks kind of ugly with that big bulge there, but at least it makes it fully compatible with the EG kit here. It's really hard to overlook this problem because Bandai basically gives you a version of this weapon that doesn't work with the kit that's bundled together as an upgrade. It's quite unacceptable in my eyes as a kit for people new to the hobby. With that said, the weapon itself is great for builders and fans who want to use this with other kits, like with the Gym 3 here. I don't have a Juagu sadly, but what I mean is, the Beam Javelin is actually a very rare weapon besides the OD version which you can't buy easily, and we finally have a version of this weapon that you can just go out and buy easily. So for that reason, this weapon is quite important to model fans, even though it's not quite important to this kit itself. Next we have the Bazooka, which you may have seen here and there in the past year. It's nice and efficient in its design, being two pieces sandwiched together all the way through except for the handle. So you do get a seam running down the entire length of the weapon, though it's not too visible in the grey plastic like this. The separate handle can pivot forward like this, which is a very important feature in all modern bazookas. The bottom of the handle comes off like this to accommodate that troublesome EG hand once again. It goes in like this and the bottom goes back on, leaving a slightly ugly knob there at the base, but there's not too much else you can do. I mean, you can leave that whole part off if you really don't like how it looks, so you do get that option. With the swiveling handle, the RX-78 holds the bazooka really well, and the shoulder armor doesn't sit perfectly with the spot in the back there, but most models can't manage that either, so it's really hard to hold that too much against the EG kit. It looks fine, and this is the only weapon so far that adds a lot of variety to the kit without some sort of strange caveat. It's also nice to have this available to everyone rather than having this locked away on that stupid clear G3 color kit. Oh, and because some reviewer or internet post is bound to talk about this, no, the spot on the back is definitely not a rack to hold a bazooka. You know the rules for injection molding now, and now if you study this part, you'll see why they had to make that strange hole here. The Beam Saber beam goes into the handle like this, and I think I showed you this already in the original review, but it's just that this time you get the actual beam in the part so you don't need it donated from another kit. The beam part is something easy for Bandai to include in the box, so I suppose there's really no harm in tossing them in like this to make the kit a bit more complete. And that's all the new weapons. So with all that said, here's a Hobby Clubhouse 3-point verdict on the Bandai entry grade 1144 RX-78 Gundam full weapon set. Number 1, the new weapons don't work as intended. This has to come first because most people will buy the set for the weapons. The bazooka is fine and the beam sabers are fine, and that's not surprising, but the Gundam Hammer works in a very limited capacity and is basically no fun to play for a younger fan. And the Beam Javelin is an awkward mess sticking out like that, and it's really hard to see why Bandai thought this was acceptable for release as it is. It kinda makes you wonder if that's the reason why we only saw the bazooka last year, even though the other weapons were already done. So no, this is not good. And number 2, this is great for mixed builds. On the other hand, the limitations of the weapons are mostly if you only use these with the EG Gundam, and only if you use what's in the box. The Beam Javelin is a rare weapon in model kits, and it's a valuable resource to have because this kit probably won't be too hard to find and buy, and it certainly is very affordable. The Gundam Hammer might take a bit more work, but the mold itself is beautiful and it has a lot of potential to unlock as a builder. Even for the bazooka, if you don't like the knob on handle, it's not too hard for builders to glue it on and then reshape the handle down to a size that you like. So while the weapon set here isn't a good fit for the EG Gundam, they are very useful for many other kits and many different builds. And number 3, this is no longer a good starter kit, and I don't mean the loose joints with the Gundam as it gets older. The best part about the EG Gundam was how uncomplicated it was. You have exactly what you need to experience the best parts of buying and building a Gundam model, but the weapons here really work against that. The kit is no longer color accurate, and the weapons even expose the limits of this kit when it was completely invisible before. Things like the floppy Gundam Hammer will teach new fans the ugly sides of the hobby when something is half-baked out of the box. Also, I think it was such a great idea to have no loose parts when the kit was finished. Everything has its place on the bare kit, and it's such a clean and tidy experience. But this stuff here, it's all clutter that's going to sit in the box, and it taints that very pure and very balanced kit that we once had. Maybe with the exception of the bazooka, the other weapons bring down the kit and it complicates it more than it makes the experience better or richer as someone's first Gundam model kit. So that's a review for the full weapon set for the EG Gundam. An unfortunate misstep in the stellar entry grade series so far. The weapons are nice, but it kinda makes you wish Bandai would just add a few more weapons and then just make a new version of this kit altogether. Thank you so much for watching. come look us up on social media with updates on upcoming videos and sneak peeks at future projects, links are in the description below. Or hang out here some more with one of these other videos. But before you go, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to be notified of new videos from Hobby Clubhouse, and I'll see you next time.